of items, whether they are in the concurrent list or the state list, not just in the union list of Schedule 7, into their ambit, and to legislate on things that are clearly in the state and concurrent lists without any consultation with the states. This is a mandate to this committee to examine the constitutional provisions that affect state autonomy, and it is aimed at benefiting the notion of federalism in all states and not just the state of Tamil Nadu. For example, the chairman is actually from Kerala. The committee's composition, as you know, I've already spoken about, and the timeline is that they will submit an interim report by January and a final report within 2 years. Now, it is important to note that much of the fight for federalism, if you look back, has stayed unfulfilled in its ambition, irrespective of who comes to power. I've said this in the union government. I've said it before. I've said it in many articles in the Indian Express, in Outlook India. More than political ideology, this notion of centralizing power in Delhi and centralizing all administration in Delhi is a tendency that happens to whoever happens to sit in office, particularly if they are simple majority governments. It is worth noting, I think, that the Rajamanar committee was more than 50 years ago. The report was tabled 50 years ago this month. But the committee is probably 55 years ago, 56 years ago, from 1969. And yet these issues persist. It is not about which party. If you remember, at that time it was a different party in office in Delhi. It is a different party now. And so consistency is the hallmark of our character, of our political ideology. We have stayed true to these issues irrespective of who is in our coalition, irrespective of which party is running the government in Delhi. To the contrary, the current administration in Delhi, when this Honorable Chief Minister was the Honorable Chief Minister of Gujarat, when this Honorable Prime Minister of India today was the Honorable Chief Minister of Gujarat, there had never been a greater proponent of state autonomy, federalism and states' rights than that government and that Chief Minister in recent times. Of course, the legacy goes back for us from 1969. This particular party did not exist at that time and did not have a state government at that time. So our history and our legacy is longer. But their ferocity of the fight, of the challenge, was second to none when they were running the government for 13 years. And now that they have been running the union government for about 11 years. Suddenly they have turned 180 degrees and are exactly opposing the very statements and the very intent and the very ideology and philosophy that this Honorable Chief Minister so vociferously fought for in that stage. In that sense, I would say that the areas of concern that the Honorable Chief Minister has highlighted in his speech yesterday, that is to bring back education into the state list, to remove aberrations such as NEET, where the government of India gets to dictate to the states who run their own state medical colleges with their own money and their own setup, how there should be a union exam. And then we find so many problems with the notion of union exams, as you've seen all the scams and the scandals associated with NEET. But also, particularly in the area of finance, where the government of India has started to put a lot more of the financial ambit into its purview and do things which are patently illegitimate, like withholding funds passed in the appropriation bill by citing extraneous conditions not contained in the bill, such as you have to do NEP or you won't get SSA funds, etc. And also in the era of GST, where the states have lost a lot of their fiscal flexibility to raise their revenue. So I think it is high time. In fact, one could argue that though this is the attempt after 60s twice, 80s once, 2000s twice, this is the sixth attempt. In some sense, it is more urgent than ever before because we have seen issues arise like never before. And therefore, this is a commission not for the people of Tamil Nadu or the state of Tamil Nadu alone. It is for all of the states of India and therefore for all of the people of India to suggest a better working model going forward in light of the Supreme Court judgment of April 8, 2025. So I'll stop here and then I'm happy to take questions.
Each time I fall, I know I will rise again higher because I'm not attached to the outcome ever. Pushing myself out of my comfort zone, constantly in the search of where next.
Sir, how does the DMK plan to translate this call for state autonomy into actionable policy within the federal frame?
Well, I think you have to have a thoughtful, well-argued, well-researched, workable framework as the beginning point. No government lasts forever, not in Delhi, not in Tamil Nadu. So, as I said before, this is an effort made by the Chief Minister driven by 2 or 3 major considerations. One, it is the 6th time that these addresses have been issued and these issues have been addressed. And the 2nd time that Tamil Nadu is doing it, the other 4 times were done by the government of India at various points. And since Tamil Nadu has been the one to take the lead in the past, he feels that this is the time. Second, the judgment of the Supreme Court on the April 8th is as good a point as any because it shows the many lacunae. Though this judgment has corrected some of them, there are many more lacunae. Third, I would say we are all kind of compelled by the times we live in. There has never been a more centralizing, more disruptor of states' autonomy, union government in the history of India. Therefore, this time is as vital as any other time, in fact more vital than any other time. So it is the nature of the government in Delhi and their actions over the last 12, 11 years. It is the judgment of today and is the historical role that Tamil Nadu has always taken it for the sake of the nation and all states and all people.
Sir, what specific powers does Tamil Nadu government seek to reclaim from the state?
Yeah, again, we don't want to prejudge. That's what a thoughtful commission of very erudite, learned, experienced people should do. But at the beginning, the Chief Minister has made the initial assessment that at least things like education, which were once in the state list and taken over to the concurrent list, should be brought back. Beyond that, we don't want to bias the judgment of the commission. The commission is filled with very, very senior, thoughtful people. They will come back with a list. I only refer you to the Rajamanar committee that had tens of items. Rajamanar Commission had tens of items that it sought to have moved. My suspicion is that we will have similar outcomes in this case.
Strategic ahead of the election, or is this for a long-term governance? Because I ask this question.
Yeah, you know, listen. Anybody can interpret anything. As I've said many times before, the hardest thing in life is to attribute cause to effect. Effect is observable before our eyes. Then we all start to rationalize what was the cause of it. I only make 2-3 points. The point is, this commission's term extends past the next election. We are not only saying it should be done for the election. Second, this is extremely consistent with our position going back to the 1960s and 70s and now. We have not changed our view even 1%. We are continuing in the same trajectory and the same path, the same philosophy we have done. On the other hand, this union government, when they were running the state of Gujarat, were exact opposite philosophy and now are this way. The third thing I would say is that our consistency, our bona fides are proven by the fact that we have raised this issue irrespective of who is running the government in Delhi. When we raised it the first time, who was running the government in Delhi? It was the Congress. Right now, it's the BJP. So it is not about ideology, it is not about any particular individual. It is that our philosophy is the same irrespective of who is there. It is about the issues, it is about the people, it is about effective outcomes. I've just read you something from a member who says, the more you try to grab to the union, the more you are sealing your own failure, your own doom. because it's not possible for you to do it from there. Any thoughtful person would understand that.
Not impressed, Muthu Sami. Mind is blowing, Muthu Swami.
20% off. Book now at mandala.com.
ಅಕ್ಕ ಒರೆಸುವ ನೀರಿಗೆ ಡಿಟರ್ಜೆಂಟ್ ಹಾಕೊಳ್ಳಿ.
ನೀರಿಗೆ ಡಿಟರ್ಜೆಂಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಟ್ರೈ ಮಾಡಿ ಮಿಸ್ಟರ್ ಮಸಲ್ ಫ್ಲೋರ್ ಕ್ಲೀನರ್ ವಿತ್ ಮೈಕ್ರೋ ಲಿಫ್ಟ್ ಆಕ್ಷನ್. ಬೇಕಿಲ್ಲ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಾ ಎಫರ್ಟ್, ಬೇಕಿಲ್ಲ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಾ ಟೈಮ್. ಮಿಸ್ಟರ್ ಮಸಲ್ ಫ್ಲೋರ್ ಕ್ಲೀನರ್.
Hello and welcome to the Hindus Pale podcast. I'm your host, Samreen Vani. President Trump's reciprocal tariffs might be on hold for now, but this is certainly not the last we've heard of them. And judging by the effect of the announcement on markets, estimates on global growth and international trade, at least for some time now, uncertainty seems to be the new normal. And this unilateral imposition of tariffs, which Trump is certain will remedy the trade imbalance with many of America's allies and adversaries, protect American jobs, reduce government debt, and strengthen manufacturing. Well, this has been compared to the imposition of the import tariffs by America in the 1930s, which many say hastened the slide into the Great Depression. The difference between then and now, of course, is that there was no multilateral organization that was overseeing or enforcing global trade rules. Now, of course, we have the World Trade Organization, or the WTO, that does this job. Some argue that over the years, many disputes and litigations later, this global trade regulator has gradually lost its compass and is in the need of a massive reform. Now, during his first term, President Trump had threatened to exit the WTO and had called the 1994 agreement that established the WTO as, quote, the single worst trade deal ever made. Now, China, Trump's top economic adversary and the subject of its highest tariffs, has already filed a complaint against the US at the WTO. While it remains to be seen if the top body can prevent an all-out economic war, we ask the question, is the WTO still relevant? Mark Scott, senior advisor with the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum and former assistant United States Trade Representative for South and Central Asia, former Ambassador Mohan Kumar, Professor of Diplomatic Practice at the Jindal School of International Affairs, who has previously served as India's lead negotiator at GATT and WTO, join us today at Pale. I welcome you both. Ambassador Kumar, I would like to start with you first. Has the WTO been sidelined? And do you think the US will pay any heed or any attention to any advice coming from the WTO?
Thank you very much for having me on your podcast, Samreen. It's a great pleasure to join the Hindu podcast. No, I have to say the WTO as we know it so far, I mean, as all of us knew it, is certainly gone. And you can say it is irrelevant. And you can pretty much say it has been sidelined. I don't want to say it is dead yet, but the fact of the matter is the WTO was expected to perform three functions. One is a negotiating function, the second is a dispute settlement function, and the third is a trade monitoring function. And I have to say with the greatest of regret that it is not performing either of the three functions. The negotiating function has gone for a 6 since Doha. There is only one multilateral agreement that has been concluded, and even that has not been fully concluded. That's the fisheries. The plurilateral agreement, about which I'm sure me and Mark will talk a bit, is stuck for a variety of reasons. So there is no negotiation going on in that sense. The appellate body or the dispute settlement mechanism is a different story. It started even during Mr. Barack Obama's time. And since then, the US has systematically blocked the appointment of people to this, what would be roughly for Indian viewers, the Supreme Court, if you like. The appellate body is the ultimate court of appeal, and that has no members. So the dispute settlement mechanism has also been rendered completely dysfunctional. The trade monitoring function, they try to do whatever they can, but one of the mistakes I think in retrospect that we made was we left it to the goodwill of members to inform the WTO Secretariat as to what their trade measures are. And that is where I think we have a major problem. There are a number of members, but in particular one big member where there is a lot of opacity about trade measures, and therefore even the trade monitoring function, which should be fairly straightforward for a body like the WTO, is not being performed efficiently or satisfactorily. So to conclude, really the WTO is not at all living up to its task, and that is a major, major challenge, because we will talk about the Trumpian tariffs, if you like, a little later on. But the fact that it is happening at a time when the multilateral trading system has been rendered toothless and inefficient actually makes it much more serious than what it is.
Right. Mr. Linscott, Ambassador Kumar says that although the WTO is not dead, but it's certainly not, functioning as it should. What do you feel? Has the WTO been sidelined? Will the US listen to any advice coming in from the WTO?
Well, I certainly agree with Ambassador Kumar Mohan on the bottom line. It's sidelined. It's largely irrelevant. In my most cavalier moments in the recent past, I have declared it irrelevant. And, I think what's really important to understand, though, in this context is that the decline of the WTO, its diminishing relevance, goes back long before the first Trump administration. I actually think it goes back to around 2000, 2001. We had the launch of the Doha round of negotiations. In many respects, I think that mandate was misplaced. It was perhaps too ambitious, too far-reaching, and basically mismatched expectations at the launch of that round. And we also had the accession of China. China joined the organization, and I think there was a degree of naivete about how well WTO rules would function with respect to China's measures, China's behavior on trade. Certainly during the Doha round, the mismatched expectations involved some of the grievances that are felt now by the Trump administration. There were efforts to negotiate on tariffs, large disparities on tariffs, and really no traction in those negotiations to lower tariffs multilaterally on an MFN basis, on a non-discriminatory basis. But that said, Ambassador Kumar, I think, very articulately laid out, the three functions of the WTO and how it's generally failed on those fronts, particularly negotiations. I think that is the central failure. Dispute settlement, certainly the United States has for too long blocked appointments to the appellate body, but there were a set of grievances associated with the operations of the WTO dispute settlement system and the appellate body, and whether it was in fact engaging in legislating as opposed to simply looking at the facts. So, that's where we are now, and it's hard to imagine a scenario in which the WTO gets its mojo back. I just don't see that anytime in the near future.
First came the dream, then came the purpose. A need for stability, and then a desire to find balance. The continuously buzzing shutterbugs couldn't stop these two words repeating for me. Where next?
Right, Mr. Linscott, I'll just stick to that. So let's talk about the fallout in case if these reciprocal tariffs kick in. So the WTO now expects that the world GDP is going to grow at 2.2%. It says that it's 0.6 percentage points, lower than their baseline projections. They are talking about a shrinking of world merchandise trade. In case if these reciprocal tariffs are enacted. Now, after the 2008 financial crisis, one of the things that the then Director General of WTO, Roberto Azevedo, he said that the world would have been in a much worse shape without the WTO in the aftermath of the financial crisis. I want to ask you now, in case of these tariffs, now if the way a lot of people talk about it as it's the single largest economic shock since the Great Wars. So in case if these tariffs are implemented and these do come into effect, the question then arises, can the WTO prevent an economic or a financial crisis this time around?
And I think the simple answer, the short answer is no. And the WTO is simply not in a position to, I think, stem any global economic decline, even a very dramatic one. I mean, it simply is not a forum where most of the world's nations can come together and, basically be honest with one another and essentially find a solution out of that kind of crisis. I can see that happening in bilateral negotiations and regional negotiations and reactions to the U.S. tariffs, in the market's reactions to the U.S. tariffs. Those could put a break on the economic situation going into a really bad place. But it won't be the organization, I think, that is coming up with the solutions and encouraging its members to come together for the good of the world and the global economy to put things back on track. And that's unfortunate. I mean, as Mohan noted, it pains me. Most of my career was multilateral, was the GATT and the WTO, and to see it become so irrelevant is really unfortunate. It's a brave new world. It's hard to really assess where we go from here at this point in time.
Right. Ambassador Kumar, do you think the WTO could protect an economic or a financial crisis this time around? Mr. Linscott is clearly not sure. What do you think?
I totally agree with Mark, actually. I mean, I spent a decade as well in the GATT and WTO, and neither of us is happy to see this happen to the WTO. It's extremely unfortunate. Imagine in February 2025, the Director General puts forward a proposal to the General Council asking them if she could appoint an eminent persons group to reform the WTO, and the proposal doesn't find consensus. And that is the situation.
ಹಾಫ್ ಟೈಮ್ ಹಾಕಿ ದಂಡನೆ ಕೊಟ್ರಿ 4-0 ಗೋಲ್ರ ಮುನ್ನಡೆ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಒಕ್ಕಕ್ಕೆ ಕೂತಂಡ ಒಕ್ಕ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಕಳಿಕಾರ ಮಕ್ಕ ಮನೆಕಾರ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಮುಖ್ಯ ವೇದಿಕೆಯ ಪಕ್ಕ ಬರಣದು ಕಟ್ಟವಿ ಇದಾಪ ನಡಪಗೊಳ್ಳ ಕಳಿ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಚೇಂದಂಡ ಕೆಲ ಬಯಸುಂಡೆಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಮುಖ್ಯ ವೇದಿಕೆಯ ಮಿಂಜಲು ಟೆಕ್ನಿಕಲ್ ಟೇಬಲ್ ಸ್ಟಾಲ್ಸ್ ಹೋಟೆಲ್ ಉಂಡು ಉಂಡಿತ್ತು ಬಾರಿ ನಲ್ಲರು ಕಳಿನ ನೋಟಂಗ ಚೇಂದಂಡ ಚೆಪ್ಪುಡಿರ ದಂಡು ಒಕ್ಕಡ ಕಳಿಕಾಡ ಪೆದನ ಟೆಕ್ನಿಕಲ್ ಟೇಬಲ್ಗೆ ಚುಡಿದು ಕಟ್ಟವಿ ಅನ್ನನೆ 1997 ಇಸ್ವಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಶುರುವಾನಂತ ಹಾಕಿ ನಮ್ಮೆ ಕೊಡಗರ ಮೂಲೆ ಮೂಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕರಡ ಕಡಂಗ ಅಮ್ಮತ್ತಿ ಹುದಿಕೇರಿ ಮಡಿಕೇರಿ ನಾಪೋಕಲ್ ಮಾದಾಪುರ ಕೊಡಗರ ಮೂಲೆ ಮೂಲೆ ನಡೆದು ಈಗ ದಾಖಲರ ಮುಂದನೆ ಕುರಿ 396 ಒಕ್ಕಡ ಕಳಿನ ಮುದ್ದಂಡ ಹಾಕಿ ನಮ್ಮೆ ಬೊಳ್ಳಿ ನಮ್ಮೆ ಮಡಿಕೇರಿ ನಡೆದ ಕೂತಂಡ ಒಕ್ಕಕಾರ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಬರಣದು ಕಟ್ಟವಿ ಕೂತಂಡ ಒಕ್ಕಕಾರ ಕಳಿಕರ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಬಾರಿ ಅನ್ನನೆ ಕ್ಯಾಲೆಟ್ರ ಒಕ್ಕಕ್ಕೆ ಕ್ಯಾಲೆಟ್ರ ದಕ್ಷಿತ್ ಅಪ್ಪಣ್ಣ ಹಿಂಗ್ ಕುಶಾಲನಗರ ಹಿಂಗ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಟೀಮ್க்கு ಅನ್ನನೆ ಮಚ್ಚಂಡ ದರ್ಶನ್ ತಮ್ಮಯ್ಯ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಟೀಮ್க்கு ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ರೀನಾ ಗಿರೀಶ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಕಾವಾಡಿ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಟೀಮ್க்கு ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ರವಿ ತಮ್ಮಯ್ಯ ಅಂಡ್ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಕಾವಾಡಿ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಟೀಮ್க்கு ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ರಘು ಪೆಮ್ಮಯ್ಯ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಕಾವಾಡಿ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಟೀಮ್க்கு ಕೂತಂಡವಕಾರ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಬಾರಿ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ರಮೇಶ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಕಾವಾಡಿ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಟೀಮಕ್ಕೆ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ರತ್ತು ಅಪ್ಪಣ್ಣ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಟೀಮಕ್ಕೆ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಹಾಕಿ ಟೀಮಕ್ಕೆ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ತಾರಾ ಚಿನ್ನಪ್ಪ ಅದೇ ಡಿಸಿಪ್ಲಿನ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜರ್ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಜಯ ಹಿಂಗಕ್ಕೆ ಮಚ್ಚಂಡ ದರ್ಶನ್ ತಮ್ಮ ಹೆಂಗಡ್ದು ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಜೀವನ್ ಮೇನಕ್ಕಿ ಕಾವಾಡಿ ಹಿಂಗ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಟೀಮಕ್ಕೆ ಅನ್ನನೆ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಟೀಮಕ್ಕೆ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಗಣೇಶ್ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಕಾವಾಡಿ ಅನ್ನನೆ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ವಿನು ದಿನೇಶ್ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಕಾವಾಡಿ ಹಿಂಗ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಟೀಮಕ್ಕೆ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಲಾಲಾ ಮಾಚಾ ಅಂಡ್ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಕಾವಾಡಿ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಪೊನ್ನು ಪನ್ನ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಟೀಮಕ್ಕೆ ಅನ್ನನೆ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಜಯಕುಮಾರ್ ಟೀಮ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜರ್ಗೆ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಮಧು ನಾಚಪ್ಪ ಚೆಂಬೆಬೋಳು ಹಿಂಗಡ್ದು ಕರವಂಡ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿಗೆ ಮೂಕೊಂಡ ರೋಸಿ ಹಿಂಗಡದು ಇದಾಪ ನಡಪಗೊಳ್ಳ ಕಳಿ ಶಾಂದಂಡ ಪಿಂಜ ಚೆಪ್ಪುಡಿದ ದಂಡು ಒಕ್ಕ ತಯಾರಾಯ್ತಿರೊಂದು ಕಟ್ಟವಿ ನಿಂಗಡ ಕಳಿಕಾಡದ ಪೆದತನ ಟೆಕ್ನಿಕಲ್ ಟೇಬ್ಗೆ ಚುಣಿದು ಕಟ್ಟವಿ ಮುದ್ದಂಡ ಹಾಕಿ ನಮ್ಮೆ ದಂಡ 2025 ಬುಳ್ಳಿ ನಮ್ಮೆ 396 ಒಕ್ಕಳ ಬೆಚ್ಚಿಟ್ಟು ಕಲ್ಚಿಡೊಂದ ಕೇಳಿ ಕೀರ್ತಿ ಮುದ್ದಂಡ ಒಕ್ಕ ಪೋಪ ಅದು ಅಲ್ಲದೆ ಆದ್ಯವಾಯ್ತು 5A ಸೈಡ್ ವುಮೆನ್ಸ್ ನಡ್ತುವಂಥದ್ದು ಮುದ್ದಂಡವಕ್ಕ ನಲ್ಲೂರು ಕಾರ್ಬಾರ್ನ ಈ ಮಡಿಕೇರಿರ ಫೀಲ್ಡ್ ಮಾರ್ಷಲ್ KM ಕಾರ್ಯಪ್ಪ ಕಳಿಪಾರ ನಡೆದ ಉಂಡು KA12MA 4324 KA12MA 4324
ನಿಂಗಡ ವೆಹಿಕಲ್ ಇನ್ನೊರು ವೆಹಿಕಲ್ಗೆ ತೊಂದರೆ ಆಯ್ತು ಅದಲ್ತ ನಿಂಗಡ ವೆಹಿಕಲ್ ಮೆಂಬರ್ ಡೋರ್ ಸಮೇತ ಇಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಿಲ್ಲ ಇಡ್ತಿದ್ ಸಾಕಾರ ದಾರಿ KA12MA 4324 ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಜಯಕುಮಾರ್ ಟೀಮ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜರ್ ಐಂಕ್ ಪೊರ್ಕೊಂಡ ಸುನಿಲ್ ಐಂಗಡರು ಒತ್ತಾಸರಿ ನಾಮುಂಡು ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಜಯಕುಮಾರ್ ಟೀಮ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜರ್ ಐಂಗಕ್ಕೆ ಪೊರ್ಕೊಂಡ ಸುನಿಲ್ ಐಂಗಡದು ಅನ್ನನೆ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಡಾನ್ ಬೆಳ್ಳೆಪ್ಪ ಐಂಗಡ ಕಳಿನನ್ ಮೆಚ್ಚಿತ್ತು ಕೇಳಪಂಡ ಶಾರದಾ ಪೆಮ್ಮಯ್ಯ ಹಾತೂರ್ ಐಂಗಡರು ಒತ್ತಾಸರಿ ನಾಮುಂಡು ಡಾನ್ ಬೆಳ್ಳೆಪ್ಪ ಹಿಂಗಕ್ಕೆ ಕೇಳಪಂಡ ಶಾರದಾ ಪೆಮ್ಮಯ್ಯ ಹಿಂಗಡದು ಹಾತೂರ್ ಅನ್ನನೆ ಮಂಡಪಂಡ ಡಾನ್ ಬೆಳ್ಳೆಪ್ಪ ಹಿಂಗಕ್ಕೆ ಕೇಕಡ ಪೂವಿ ರಮೇಶ್ ಚೆಂಬೆಬೆಳ್ಳೂರ್ ಐಂಗಡರು ಒತ್ತಾಸರಿ ಮಂಡು ಡಾನ್ ಬೆಳ್ಳೆಪ್ಪ ಹಿಂಗ ಕೇಕಡ ಪೂವಿ ರಮೇಶ್ ಚೊಟ್ಟೆಕ್ ಮಾಡ ರಮೇಶ್ ಐಂಗಡದು ಮಂಡಪಂಡ ಸಜನ್ ಅಚ್ಚ ಇಂಕ್ 3ನೇ ಕ್ವಾರ್ಟರ್ ನಡೆದುಂಡು ಗೋಲ್ ಅಂಜನೆ ಗೋಲ್ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಕಡ ಅಂಜನೆ ಗೋಲ್ கேக்கட சுப்பிரமணியங்கிறது கருவண்ட டீமுக்கு. ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಸಜನ್ ಅಚ್ಚಯ್ಯ ಪೂಜ್ಯಂತ ಗೋಲ್ನುಂಡು 5-0 ಗೋಲ್ರ ಮುನ್ನಡೆ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಒಕ್ಕಕ್ಕೆ. ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಡಾನ್ ಬೆಳ್ಳೆ ಪಾಯಿಂಕ್ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡ ಮಿಟ್ಟು ಮುತ್ತಣ್ಣ ಅಂಗಡ ರೊತ್ತ ಸರಿನಾಮ್.
KA12MA 4324 I-20 ಅಕ್ಕಲಂಜಿ ಅನೌನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಿനുള്ള ದಯವಿಟ್ಟು ಅಡ್ತಿ ಸಾಕಾರ್ದಾರಿ KA12MA
4324 I-20 ಗಡ್ತಿ ಸಾಕಾರ್ದಾರಿ
പെനാൾട്ടി കാരർ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡವಕಕ್ಕೆ ಇದಾಪ ನಡಪಗಳ കളി ಚಾಂದಂಡ ಚೆಪ್ಪುಡಿರ ದಂಡ ಒಕ್ಕಡ കളിക്കാർത്ത പെദತ್ನ ಟೆಕ್ನಿಕಲ್ ಟೇಬಲ್ ಗೆ ಹೆಚ್ಚುಡನ್ನು ಕಟ್ಟವಿ ಚಾಂದಂಡ ಚೆಪ್ಪುಡಿರ
9ನೇ ಪೆನಾಲ್ಟಿ ಕಾರ್ನರ್ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡವಕಕ್ಕೆ ಪೆನಾಲ್ಟಿ ಕಾರ್ನರ್ ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡವಕಕ್ಕೆ 10ನೇ ಪೆನಾಲ್ಟಿ ಕಾರ್ನರ್ ಆರನೇ ಗೋಲು ದಾಖಲೆ ಮಾಡಿತ್ತು ಮಂಡ್ಯಪಂಡವಕ್ಕ ಸಜನ್ ಅಚ್ಚಯ್ಯ ಇದಾಪ ನಡಪಗಳ ಕಳಿ ಚಾಂದಂಡ ಚೆಪ್ಪುಡಿರ ಕಲಿಯಂಡ ವಿಹಾನ್ ತಿಮ್ಮಯ್ಯ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಉಂಡೆಂಗಿ ಟೆಕ್ನಿಕಲ್ ಟೇಬಲ್ ರ ಪಕ್ಕ ಬರಂಡು ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಮುಖ್ಯ ವೇದಿಕೆಯ ಪಕ್ಕ ಬರಂಡು ಕಲಿಯಂಡ ವಿಹಾನ್ ತಿಮ್ಮಯ್ಯ ಪೆನಾಲ್ಟಿ ಕಾರ್ನರ್ 11ನೇ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಒಕ್ಕಕ್ಕೆ ಕಲಿಯಂಡ ವಿಹಾನ್ ತಿಮ್ಮಯ್ಯ ಎಲ್ಲಿಂಡೆಂಗೆ ಮುಖ್ಯ ವೇದಿಕೆಯ ಪಕ್ಕ ಬರಂಡು മൂന്നനെ ക്വാർട്ടർ ആച്ചി ഇനി ഒരു ക്വാർട്ടർ ഇപ്പ और
नहीं है अभी तक।
अरे निहाल बाबू बैठिए बैठिए आइए।
बड़े फिट लग रहे हैं।
सुना नया ट्रक भी ले लिया आपने। अब कितने हो गए? 15 16
हैं? थोड़े टिप्स हमें भी दीजिए ना।
हाँ हेल्थ और वेल्थ दोनों के। हेल्थ के लिए रोज सुबह उठकर योगा और 10,000 स्टेप्स।
और वेल्थ के लिए?
वेल्थ के लिए ट्रक की हेल्थ। ट्रक की हेल्थ? हाँ भाई ट्रक की हेल्थ, जिसके लिए चाहिए शैफलर का नए जमाने का क्लच जो डबल चलता है। बढ़िया।
शैफलर के इंटेलिजेंट रिपेयर सॉल्यूशंस के साथ बढ़ हिट चल।
अरे भाई हमारे लिए भी ग्रीन टी लाइए। अभी ने भी डबल चलना है।
टीम करवांडा कुर्क क्रिकेट फाउंडेशन रजिस्ट टीम करवांडा इंगಕ್ಕೆ कुर्क क्रिकेट फाउंडेशन कोडवा क्रिकेट लेदर बॉल
14ನೇ ಪೆನಾಲ್ಟಿ ಕಾರ್ನರ್ ಕಳಿಯಾಚಿ. களியாச்சி இதுல மண்டேப்பண்ட ஒக்க 6 கோல்ற முன்னடையில ಸೆಮಿಫೈನಲ್ಸ್ ಹೋಯ್ತು. ಇನ್ನು ಮಿಂಜಕ್ಕೆ ಈ ವೀಕ್ಷಕ ವಿವರಣೆ ಅಜ್ಜೆಟ್ರ ವಿಕ್ರಮ್ ಉತ್ತಪ್ಪ ಚೆಯ್ಯಂಡ ಬನಿತ್ ಭೋಜನ ನಡೆಸಿದಪ್ಪ. ಪೆಬ್ಬಟ್ಟಿರ ತರುಣ್ ಉತ್ತಪ್ಪ ದೊಡ್ಡಪುಲಿಕೋಟ್ ಕರ್ವಂಡ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿಗೆ ಅದನ್ನೇ ಟೀಮ್ ಕರ್ವಂಡ ಹಿಂಗಕ್ಕೆ ಕುರ್ ಕ್ರಿಕೆಟ್ ಲೆದರ್ ಬಾಲ್ ಪ್ರೀಮಿಯರ್ ಲೀಗ್ ಕರ ಅದನ್ನೇ ಕಡ ಸುಬ್ರಹ್ಮಣಿ ಕರ್ವಂಡ ಟೀಮ್ಗೆ ಅದನ್ನೇ ಮೂಕೊಂಡ ರೋಜಿ ಕರ್ವಂಡ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿಗೆ. ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಮಿಟ್ಟು ಮುತ್ತಣ್ಣ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಡಾನ್ ಬೆಳ್ಳೆಪ್ಪ ಹಿಂಗಕ್ಕೆ ಚೊಟ್ಟೆಕ್ಮಾಡ ರಮೇಶ್ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಸಜ್ಜನ ಚೈ ಹಿಂಗಕ್ಕೆ ಡಾನ್ ಬೆಳ್ಳೆಪ್ಪ ಹಿಂಗಕ್ಕೆ ಕಕಡ ಪೂವಿ ರಮೇಶ್ ಚಂಪೆಬೆಳ್ಳೂರ್ ಕೋಳಪಂಡ ಶಾರದಾ ಪೆಮ್ಮಯ್ಯ ಹಾತೂರ್ ಡಾನ್ ಬೆಳ್ಳೆಪ್ಪ ಹಿಂಗಕ್ಕೆ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಜಯಕುಮಾರ್ ಟೀಮ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜರ್ ಹಿಂಗ ಬರ್ಕೊಂಡ ಸುನಿಲ್ ಕೂತಂಡ ಒಕ್ಕಕಾರ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಮುಖ್ಯ ವೇದಿಕೆಯ ಪಕ್ಕ ಬಾಣದ ಕೊಟ್ಟೆ ಕೂತಂಡ ಒಕ್ಕಕಾರ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಜಯಕುಮಾರ್ ಟೀಮ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜರ್ ಹಿಂಗ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಮಧು ನಾಚಪ್ಪ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಪೊನ್ನು ಪೊನ್ನಪ್ಪ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಕಾವಾಡಿ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಟೀಮ್ಗೆ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಲಾಲಾ ಮಾಚೆ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಕಾವಾಡಿ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಟೀಮ್ಗೆ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ವಿನು ದಿನೇಶ್ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಕಾವಾಡಿ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಟೀಮ್ಗೆ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಗಣೇಶ್ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಕಾವಾಡಿ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಟೀಮ್ಗೆ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಜೀವನ್ ಮೇನಕ್ಕಿ ಕಾವಾಡಿ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಟೀಮ್ಗೆ ಡಿಸಿಪ್ಲಿನ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜರ್ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಜಯ ಇಂಕೆ ಮಚ್ಚಂಡ ದರ್ಶನ್ ತಮ್ಮಯ್ಯ ಇಂಗಡದು ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಹಾಕಿ ಟೀಮ್ಗೆ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ತಾರಾ ಚಿನ್ನಪ್ಪ ಇಂಗಡದು ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ರತ್ತು ಅಪ್ಪಣ್ಣ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ಟೀಮ್ಗೆ ಮಂಡೇಪಂಡ ರಮೇಶ್.
अरे निहाल बाबू बैठिए बैठिए आइए.
बड़े फिट लग रहे हैं.
सुना नया ट्रक भी ले लिया आपने. अब कितने हो गए? 15 16
थोड़े टाइम समय भी दीजिए ना.
हाँ हेल्थ और वेल्थ दोनों के. हेल्थ के लिए रोज सुबह उठकर योगा और 10,000 स्टेप्स.
और वेल्थ के लिए?
वेल्थ के लिए ट्रक की हेल्थ. ट्रक की हेल्थ? हाँ भाई ट्रक की हेल्थ जिसके लिए चाहिए शैफलर का नए जमाने का क्लच जो डबल चलता है. बढ़िया.
शैफलर के इंटेलिजेंट रिपेयर सॉल्यूशंस के साथ बढ़े चलो.
अरे भाई हमारे लिए भी ग्रीन टी लाइए.
अभी नहीं भी डबल चलना है.
मुश्किल रास्तों पर जरूरत होती है एक भरोसेमंद साथी की जो साथ ना छोड़े. इसलिए मैं भरोसा करता हूँ सिर्फ जर्मन टेक्नोलॉजी से बने शेफलर के स्टीयरिंग सस्पेंशन पर जिसकी हाई क्वालिटी दे पूरी सेफ्टी लंबे समय तक. शेफलर है तो बड़े चलो.
ಅಜ್ಜೆಟ್ರ ವಿಕ್ರಮುತ್ತಪ್ಪ ಚೆಯ್ಯಂಡ ಬನೀತ್ ಭೋಜನ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಲ್ಲಾಮೆ. Player of the match, Bopana. Kotana Bopana, player of the match.